Right now, a Silicon Valley tech giant trying to build a multi-billion-dollar AI data center is literally in a bidding war with a California strawberry farmer for the exact same refrigerated truck. Welcome to another deep dive. Today we are looking at a logistical landscape that is honestly just ruthless.
Yeah, it really is. We are watching an industry that has been, gasping for air for years, suddenly experience this complete paradigm shift. The constraints on moving goods right now are forcing a level of innovation we just haven't seen in decades.
Exactly. And to give you, the listener, the absolute best breakdown of how this is happening, we have pulled from a pretty heavy stack of sources today. We're looking at industry reports from FTR Transportation Intelligence, Sonar data tracking the National Truckload Index, the Logistics Managers Index, and some incredibly detailed case studies from ProvisionAi on load optimization.
Right. And our mission for today's deep dive is to understand why this freight market has suddenly become so fiercely competitive and, how end-to-end optimization is fundamentally changing the physics of the entire supply chain.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the reality of the current trucking market is staggering. Spot rates, which is basically the premium price a shipper pays to move a load on demand, have hit a new daily high of $3.22 a mile.
Which is insane. That number is basically the sound of trucking executives throwing a parade right now. For the last 4 years, freight rates have just been in the basement.
Totally.
But now, looking at the Logistics Managers Index, transportation prices are rising at the fastest rate in a decade. But the underlying mechanics of why we are at that 322 mark are meaningfully different than the market spikes we saw a few years ago.
Right. I noticed that in the data, actually. Normally, you'd expect this kind of price action when consumer demand just goes through the roof. But consumer purchasing is relatively flat right now, right?
Exactly, yeah. Housing construction is also flat, which normally moves a massive amount of flatbed freight. We are in a purely supply-driven capacity crunch. There simply isn't enough physical equipment or available labor to move even the baseline level of goods.
And looking strictly at the macroeconomic data in our sources, there are a few massive roadblocks squeezing that supply. The reports point to a major wave of smaller carriers going bankrupt over the last year, and we want to be clear that we're impartially reporting the facts from the sources here, not taking any political sides on these issues.
Right, of course. We're just looking at the data.
Exactly. But that carrier contraction was largely accelerated by stricter regulatory enforcement, specifically things like crackdowns on immigrant drivers and the strict enforcement of English language proficiency rules, which effectively wiped out a huge chunk of the available labor pool overnight. Add to that the higher fuel prices driven by geopolitical conflicts like the war in Iran, and you have a heavily constrained supply side.
Yeah, and the thing to remember is that smaller fleets usually act as the shock absorbers in this industry. When they vanish due to all those pressures you mentioned, the capacity left over is highly prized. So carriers hold all of the leverage, and they can essentially name their price.
Which brings us back to that bizarre plot twist I mentioned earlier. Here's where it gets really interesting. You have all those heavy macroeconomic factors squeezing capacity, and then you have massive tech titans like Meta in a frantic race to build AI data centers.
Yeah, this part is wild because they have to move highly sensitive, incredibly expensive servers and cooling systems across the country. And the optimal way to transport that delicate temperature-sensitive tech is inside climate-controlled reefer trucks.
Wait, reefer trucks? Like for food?
Yes, exactly. These are the exact same refrigerated trailers that the agricultural industry relies on to move fresh produce from the fields to the grocery store.
So you literally have Mark Zuckerberg's AI servers taking up the capacity meant for your groceries.
That is exactly what is happening, yeah.
It's like playing a massive game of musical chairs, but the regulations pulled away a third of the chairs, carrier bankruptcies pulled away another third, and the AI data centers took the rest. The music stops, and companies trying to ship everyday consumer goods are forced to pay absolute top dollar for whatever space is left.
Right. What's fascinating here is the ripple effect that creates inside a shipper's operation. If transportation capacity is this tight and you are paying a premium of $3.22 a mile, wasting any space on a truck is no longer just a minor operational hiccup. It is a catastrophic financial sin.
Wait, I have to stop you there, because I was reading the Georgia DOT weigh-in motion scale study from our stack. They analyzed 156,000 heavily loaded trucks driving down the highway. And they found that a staggering 91% of those trucks were significantly underloaded. They were leaving 2,000 pounds or more of usable capacity completely empty, on almost every single truck. That
But it,
sounds physically impossible.
I know, it sounds crazy.
Right. Like if I'm a logistics manager paying top dollar in a constrained market, there's zero chance I'm letting a truck leave my dock half empty. Why would any rational business allow that?
Because humans are operating those docks, and human loaders are absolutely terrified of the regulatory math. The sources point to a phenomenon called tribal knowledge.
Meaning warehouse workers are just doing things the way they've always been done because nobody really understands the actual rules.
Basically, yeah. Let's look at the regulations they are dealing with. There is a federal and state mathematical equation called the California Bridge Formula. It dictates exactly how weight must be distributed across a vehicle's axles so it doesn't destroy highway infrastructure.
Okay, so it's not just total weight, it's how it's spread out.
Right. One specific rule is that the rear axles of a trailer can be no more than 40 feet from the kingpin.
And for those picturing the mechanics of a semi-truck, the kingpin is that heavy steel pin under the front of the trailer that locks into the fifth wheel of the tractor, right? Like the main pivot point.
Correct. So you have strict legal limits on how much weight can sit on the drive axles near that kingpin versus the tandem axles at the back of the trailer. It is incredibly tricky math to do on the fly.
I can imagine.
If a loader gets the weight distribution wrong, that truck hits a weigh station and fails the inspection. The company is hit with massive fines, the shipment is delayed, and they sometimes even have to pay for another truck to come out and offload the excess weight right there on the side of the highway.
Oh, wow. Okay, so a warehouse worker making hourly wages definitely doesn't want to be the person who costs the company a $10,000 fine. So they just play it incredibly safe, right? They deliberately underload the truck to create a massive safety margin.
Exactly. But that safety margin is actually a hidden 10% penalty on transportation costs. It's an invisible tax on the entire supply chain.
That is wild.
Yeah, and since transportation makes up roughly 70% of total supply chain costs for these large brands, playing it safe is literally costing them tens of millions of dollars.
It's like trying to run a marathon while wearing a weighted vest. You are exhausting your budget before you even hit the highway. And the data shows this inefficiency doesn't just happen inside the trailer, right? It happens in how the trucks are called to the warehouse in the first place.
Yeah, through order bunching. Supply planning systems are historically completely disconnected from the physical reality of a loading dock.
How so?
Well, a company's software sees demand and simply says, hey, we need to restock the Chicago distribution center. And it just dumps all those orders into the system at once.
So one day, the warehouse gets 24 trucks showing up at the gate out of nowhere. And then the next day, they get 3.
Exactly. And the warehouse physically cannot unload 24 trucks in an 8-hour shift. So those drivers end up sitting in the lot for days, racking up massive detention fees.
And the warehouse staff is probably burned out working extreme overtime too.
Completely burned out. But arguably worse, it forces carriers into running deadhead miles.
Meaning an empty truck driving to a pickup location, burning fuel, but making absolutely no money for the carrier.
Yeah. If a carrier is expecting a steady flow of freight, but suddenly hits a day where only 3 trucks are needed instead of 24, they have to scramble to find freight elsewhere. They end up driving 100 empty deadhead miles just to find their next load. It destroys their operational efficiency.
Which just seems insane. If you were paying $3.22 a mile for a premium service, why are we treating truck deployment like turning on a faucet and just hoping the water pressure is right?
Right, you wouldn't run any other part of a billion-dollar business that way.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the legacy systems operate this way because the math is simply too complex for human planners or basic spreadsheets to solve.
Right, because there's so many factors.
Think about the variables involved here. You've got warehouse dock door availability, labor shifts, transit times from 10 different manufacturing plants, preferred carrier contracts, and the exact physical dimensions and weights of thousands of different products. That is a combinatorial math problem.
Basically a problem where the number of possible combinations grows exponentially with every new variable you add, right? Until it's just way beyond human comprehension.
Precisely. A human brain cannot solve a combinatorial math problem of that scale in real time. You need an automated system to act as both a pilot and a compass. So if human brains and legacy software can't fix this order bunching chaos, how are companies actually fixing it?
Well, looking at the ProvisionAi case studies, they tackle the problem by splitting it into predicting the future network and packing the physical box.
Yeah, let's break down that first part, predicting the future. ProvisionAi has a system called level load, which they describe as an operational pilot.
How does that pilot work?
Level load acts as an intelligent digital twin of the company's entire supply chain network. Instead of reacting day to day to that chaotic order bunching, level load looks 30 to 60 days into the future.
Oh, wow, that far ahead.
Yeah, it ingests all the raw demand data and runs it through its algorithms to smooth out the volume. It asks the critical physical questions, like, does the receiving warehouse actually have the labor and dock space to unload 15 trucks next Tuesday?
And if they don't?
If not, it automatically adjusts the deployment schedule. It pulls high-priority shipments forward to Monday and pushes less critical items back to Wednesday, creating a steady, predictable flow.
And to make that steady flow actually work with the trucking companies, they use this brilliant tactical move called the placeholder tendering trick.
Yes, this is such a smart workaround.
I really want to unpack how this actually works in the software. Because an ERP system, the enterprise resource planning software that acts as the central nervous system for a company's inventory and logistics, is usually incredibly rigid. It demands exact data.
It is very rigid. Normally, you cannot book a truck in your ERP until you know exactly what specific products are going on that truck.
Right.
But by the time you know you need exactly 3 pallets of paper towels and 4 pallets of tissue, you are only 2 days out from shipping. It is way too late to secure a contracted truck, so you are forced onto the spot market paying those exorbitant rates.
And Levelload completely flips that workflow. It submits a dummy code, a shell stock transfer order, to the ERP system 5, 10, or even 14 days in advance.
Yep. So the system tells the carrier, hey, we need a truck on the Atlanta to Chicago lane next Thursday, but it doesn't specify what is going in it yet.
And the carriers are okay with that?
The carrier gets the tender early, and they love the predictability because it eliminates those deadhead miles we talked about. So they accept the job immediately. The shipper locks in their preferred lower contract rate and avoids the spot market entirely.
And then the specific products aren't assigned to that shell order until 24 to 48 hours before it ships. The supply planner gets to use the most accurate, up-to-the-minute inventory data to decide what is most urgently needed. It's like being a master air traffic controller who perfectly schedules the planes so there's no holding pattern, but also secures the absolute cheapest jet fuel a week in advance without even knowing who the passengers will be yet.
That's a great way to put it. And the empirical data proves this works beautifully. The Kimberly-Clark case study is a perfect illustration.
What did they do?
They implemented this technology in what they called Project EARL, early tendering and leveling. By smoothing out their network and using that placeholder trick in their ERP, they reduced their day-to-day shipment volatility by a massive 60%.
60% less chaos at the loading docks. That translates to significantly fewer detention fees and much more manageable shifts for the warehouse workers.
Oh, absolutely. Furthermore, because they were giving carriers so much advance notice, their first tender acceptance rate skyrocketed to 97%.
Meaning 97% of the time, the first carrier they called, their cheapest preferred partner, said yes.
Yeah, they insulated themselves from the volatile spot market. It saved them millions of dollars annually and earned them shipper of choice status among carriers.
Makes sense.
When capacity gets this tight, carriers actively prioritize working with Kimberly-Clark because they know the freight will be ready and their drivers won't be subjected to unpredictable delays.
But booking the truck early and avoiding the spot market is really only half the battle, right? Because once that truck backs up to the dock door, you still have to deal with that 91% underloaded problem. You still have to pack it perfectly.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second piece of the puzzle, the execution compass. Once Levelload has secured the truck and smoothed the schedule, a sister software called AutoO2 steps in to handle the physical reality of the trailer. AutoO2 is an AI-driven load builder.
Now, I want to clarify how this AI actually works because it's not just a basic volume calculator. The sources explain that it uses reinforcement learning and complex heuristics to solve the 3D puzzle of weight, cube, and stackability.
Right, so think of heuristics as highly advanced rules of thumb programmed into the AI. Rules like never put heavy liquids on top of fragile paper goods.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Very bad. And reinforcement learning is an AI training model where the system learns by trial and error, heavily rewarded for finding the most mathematically optimal configuration. In a matter of seconds, AutoO2 simulates thousands of different ways to stack pallets inside a specific trailer dimension.
It essentially plays 3D Tetris, but factoring in the physics of weight distribution so it doesn't violate the California Bridge formula or overload the axles.
Exactly. And the Riviana Foods case study highlights how critical this physical constraint is. Riviana is America's largest rice producer.
Okay.
They ship over 10,000 trucks a year. And they were dealing with an agonizing weight puzzle at their Memphis operations.
Because they ship mixed weight loads, right? They have everything from those little lightweight single-serve microwave rice cups
Hmm.
to massive 20-pound family-size bags of bulk rice.
Right. And if a human loader, relying on that flawed tribal knowledge we discussed, puts too many of the dense 20-pound bags in the nose of the trailer near the kingpin, the axle weight maxes out legally long before the trailer is physically full.
So they were leaving tons of cubic space empty just to stay legal and avoid fines.
Exactly. So they deployed Auto O2, and the AI takes over. It calculates the exact weight distribution for every single product variation, and then, this is the most practical part, it gives the forklift drivers a step-by-step visual 3D diagram on a screen.
Oh, that's brilliant.
The complex institutional knowledge isn't trapped in the loader's head anymore. It is flawlessly executed by the software. Just by solving that puzzle, Riviana saved over $1 million per lane in freight costs.
That is a stunning return on investment for simply utilizing the space you already paid for.
It really is. But beyond the financial impact, there is a massive environmental angle here too, which we see in the Unilever case study.
Let's talk about that. Unilever is a global giant. They were already running a tight ship, hitting 90 to 95% trailer utilization. Most companies would call that a huge win and just move on.
Right, but Unilever has incredibly strict net zero emissions targets. Specifically, they are trying to aggressively reduce their Scope 3 carbon emissions.
And for those unfamiliar, Scope 3 emissions are the indirect greenhouse gas emissions that occur up and down a company's value chain, like the exhaust from the third-party trucking fleets they hire.
Exactly. So every empty inch in a trailer was a sustainability failure to them. So they brought in Auto O2 to squeeze in that final 5 to 10% of unused capacity.
Did it work?
Oh, big time. By mathematically maximizing every single trailer, the data shows ProvisionAi's technology removed 88,000 truck journeys from the road globally in a single year.
88,000 entire trucks just gone from the highway.
Gone. Because the product that would have been on them was efficiently packed into the mathematically optimized space of the other trucks. That achieved massive reductions in their Scope 3 carbon footprint and simultaneously saved them $260 million.
Wow. So what does this all mean? We started out looking at a freight industry that is brutal right now. Spot rates are soaring to 322 a mile, labor regulations have tightened capacity, and AI data centers are commandeering the reefer trucks.
It's a perfect storm.
Right. But by applying this end-to-end optimization, predicting the future with level load to smooth the chaos, and executing flawlessly with Auto O2 to pack the physical trucks, these companies are turning a massive supply chain liability into a competitive weapon.
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally interact with technology in business, I think.
Yeah.
For so long, enterprise software has been purely reactive. A demand spikes and the system panics to fulfill it, regardless of the physical constraints. What we're seeing here is a shift from reacting to volatility to actively orchestrating reality. The AI is looking into the future, mapping the physical constraints of the real world, and building an executable, mathematically perfect path forward.
And that is exactly what I want you, the listener, to take away from this. You might not be managing a fleet of trucks, shipping pallets of rice or toilet paper, but the core lesson here is about bridging the gap between a good plan and great execution.
Definitely. The tribal knowledge trap exists in every industry. We all build inefficient safety margins into our work because we are afraid of failing, or we just don't have the data to trust our systems.
Right. We overcompensate for our lack of visibility. Which leaves me with this final thought. We just saw how AI can use reinforcement learning to perfectly map the physical weight of rice in a trailer 30 days in advance, smoothing out the flow to outsmart global disruptions. If algorithms can do that for heavy physical freight, how long until this exact same predictive smoothing logic is applied to the digital bandwidth of our internet to prevent server crashes? Or to our municipal power grids to level load energy distribution and prevent blackouts?
Wow, that's a wild thought.
Right, or even honestly to our own personal daily schedules. Imagine an AI that perfectly level loads your calendar 30 days out so you never have a chaotic 14-hour workday followed by a completely empty Tuesday.
An algorithmic execution compass for your schedule. Now that is an optimization we could all use.
No doubt about it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take a look around your own workflows this week and see if you can spot where your own hidden safety margins and order bunching might be hiding. Until next time.